Next up, we have Adrian Lee. Adrian Lee is the founder of the International Paranormal Society and a member of the Luton Paranormal Society in England. He has investigated ghosts and paranormal activity all over the world for 25 years. Lee first came to Minnesota in early 2008 to work on several paranormal video productions, and spent 2 years working in Minneapolis as the national and international news correspondent for a live paranormal talk radio show on 100.3 KTLK. He currently hosts the only weekly paranormal news quiz show, More Questions Than Answers, every Friday on the Dark Matter Digital Radio Network, a show that was nominated for the 2008 Comedy Awards. Lee has also appeared on My Real Ghost Story, Fox 9, WCCO, Eyewitness News, KSTP, KGRA, KSAX and KARE. Lee has written numerous books, and he currently lectures on all aspects of paranormal, including ghosts, UFOs, psychic development, and angels. Let's welcome Adrian.
Thank you very much. I've got a lot to live up to now, getting such a fabulous introduction. We're going to have some fun today. I've got some fabulous evidence to play you. I'm going to talk about the history of the buildings I've investigated. There may be some time for some questions at the end. And I'm going to play you some video. There's going to be audio, some fabulous photographs. We did an investigation in this building last night. While I've been sat drinking cups of tea and fulfilling every British stereotype, my team has been working very diligently in the background. And what we're going to do after I've introduced myself and the team is actually play, just for a couple of minutes, some of the audio and share some of the experiences of our paranormal investigation that we did in this building last night. So they've been working all day through that. You may have seen them in the basement, huddled around with their laptops and their headphones on. So I want to thank my team for putting in the man hours. You must remember that for every hour of investigation we do, if we have a couple of video cameras, IR cameras, full spectrum cameras, a couple of DVRs running, it's possible that you've got 5 hours of evidence review for every hour of investigating you do. So people don't necessarily realise that aspect of paranormal investigating, but they have done very well, and we'll play those for you, and willing, we'll have the sound working on those as well. I'm the founder of the International Paranormal Society. We're a worldwide paranormal organisation, non-profit. We have branches all over the world. This was set up originally for several reasons. Firstly, I love travel, and I really like the idea that wherever I went to in the world, a team would meet me at the airport and I'd go off and do an investigation. And this works really well. You can fly to Berlin, my team meets me, we investigate a castle in Germany. So that was one of my main priorities. Secondly, we want to share information. We're in this to prove that an afterlife exists. And you get many paranormal teams that don't want to share evidence, don't want to, give away what they've got. Well, that's completely different for us. We want to educate, we want to share, and we want to make sure everyone has access to that. So that was the reason the organisation was set up. I'm just going to introduce my team very briefly. This works very well because I like being in the spotlight. I'm a typical Aries. They prefer working in the shadows. And when Scott was handed a microphone just now, he had a fantastic look on his face, which I did capture on my cell phone. So, Scott, would you like to wave to everybody? He's my team leader. He's from Duluth. He's been on my team for about 8 or 9 years now. He's going to play and talk you through some of the EVPs and some of the evidence that we picked up last night. Karen is here today as well. Give a wave to everybody. Gloria has the best seat in the house right there. Like Stadler and Waldorf from the Muppets right there. You're not going to heckle me, are you? So that's my team. If you want to ask questions at the end, we'll be downstairs. I'll be signing books. You're welcome to chat to them about their experiences. I'm a historian. All my qualifications, all my background is in history. As a historian, when I was lecturing all over Europe, professor of art history, the thing about history is that we weren't there. We don't have a time machine. We can't go back. So when you write a history book, it's all secondary source material. You may recognise this fact from when you're researching your family tree on Ancestry and other sites like that. It's secondary. You're dealing with bank details, deeds, marriage certificates, graveyards. It's all secondary. We weren't there. What progressively happened is that as a historian, I started investigating the paranormal back in Britain 25 years ago, and I suddenly realised through my psychic skills, through the equipment, you can have conversations with the dead. You can ask them what it was like. You can talk to them. You can interview them like you would see a chat host on the TV interviewing a guest. This is like asking your granddad what he did during the war. What a fantastic opportunity. What a powerful tool. Because if you ask the dead about their names, their experiences, the dates, what happened in the building, this is information that's been lost to the knowledge of man. You're retrieving history from the lips of the dead to add to the canon of history of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, the Midwest. This information's been lost. This is now primary source material, and no one else works in this way. Now, if I actually did a paranormal investigation and the spirits gave me their names and they gave me those dates, I'd be laughed at by other historians if I just published that and wrote that. The remarkable thing is, and it almost puts hairs up on the back of my neck, and I will share these moments with you as we go along, is that when spirits have told me their names, they've told me dates of when they died, they've told me of incidents in the building that have long since been forgotten. As a historian, when I then go and explore mouldy, damp, dusty, antediluvian basements full of books, historical societies, libraries, I find them. I find that information. And the only reason I know it is because they told me. And now I have reference material. I can publish my book as a historian and say, look, these are the newspaper articles where this really happened. But the sole reason that now exists is because a dead person told me. So just have a think about that for a moment. We can now talk to a lot of people that have passed. We're solving crime from another time. We can resolve lots of different issues. Think about all the people you could access. And I'm going to bring up Jack the Ripper because my family's from Whitechapel. They were living in amongst those streets back in the 1880s, and we're in amongst that. Can you imagine talking to one of the ladies that was murdered and asking who he was? Because this is what we're now doing. This is what's now happening. And then we can back that up with historical research. So I've written the books, Mysterious Minnesota, Mysterious Midwest, some of the most historical buildings. It does help me enormously that I get into historical buildings that no one else gets access to, partly due to my qualifications in history. But let's face facts, the British accent helps as well, right? Not Australian, as some people have said to me earlier. And we're looking at urban legends, we're looking at ghostly tales. If you're interested, these books are crammed full of history and ghosts, and the only reason this exists is because I've spoken to these ghosts and they've told me. Just very briefly, I've written the book, How to Be a Christian Psychic. I am a Christian. I'm not here to preach, I'm not ramming it down anyone's throat, I don't go to church very often, but I got sick and tired of people telling me that I shouldn't be a psychic, I shouldn't be a paranormal investigator if I'm Christian. And of course, I don't believe you can claim to be a Christian and not believe in a spirit realm. The good book from front to back is just one long paranormal tale of dreams, visions, prophecies and ghosts. So it's not anti-Christian, it's positive, but it does highlight in the Bible all the places where you would find paranormal activity. Before we jump in and look at some evidence, this book came out last week. If you go downstairs and buy a copy, be careful because the ink's still wet. But this book came out last week. It's been in the back of my mind for about 8 years. I've worked on this as a meta-narrative for about 8 years now, whilst I've written other books. As an art historian, I was aware of all the UFOs that are in Renaissance art pictures because my specialism is the Italian early Renaissance. And I started to go to UFO meetings and MUFON, and I lecture on UFOs in Renaissance art. If anyone wants to see that at some point, have a word with the people that run the theatre. I can certainly come back and talk about UFOs in Renaissance art. And I started to realise that as a paranormal investigator, I've got exactly the same equipment in my equipment case as a ufologist. So already I'm starting to think, well, something odd is happening here. Think about how ghosts operate. Ghosts think they want to be somewhere, so they are. You don't see ghosts walking out of the cemetery, getting in their car and driving to haunt their house. They have no physical body. You must have to think yourself into a building to be there. And ghosts suddenly disappear, suddenly arrive in other places. This is them thinking themselves. I almost think that when our EMF meters go off, we're not measuring the ghost, we're measuring the ghost thinking, okay? And energy is information, and information is energy, and energy can be transferred. I then realised that ghosts can be physical and non-physical at the same time. I've had things thrown at me. I've been scratched, punched. But then I've seen ghosts walk through walls. So they must be able to be physical and non-physical. Think about how UFOs abduct people. They take them out of their bed, through the roof line, through the roof of the house and into the vehicle. So they've taken a physical body and managed to suck that and pull that through mass. So I suddenly realised that ghosts and UFOs have so much in common that I started the project, and 85,000 words later, I've started to get into collective consciousness, thinking you want to be somewhere. When you see a UFO travel, it appears here, it appears there. You don't see the journey. If I said to you, imagine being in Walmart right now, you don't imagine the journey to Walmart, do you? You imagine being in Walmart. So the way in which the UFO operates is looking exactly in the same way that ghosts operate. It almost makes me think that aliens have biomimicked ghosts, copy what they do and think, wow, that's a good idea. We can do that as well. So again, if you're interested, I'm giving a talk to MUFON of Minnesota on the 12th of October. If you want to come along, it's in the New Brighton Centre in Minneapolis, and that's Saturday, 1 o'clock. If you go onto the MUFON Minnesota website, I think it will be something like $5 to get in, and I will give this talk and discuss this. As Alison very kindly mentioned, I have a radio show every Friday night, More Questions Than Answers. We've been doing this for 6 years now on the Dark Matter Digital Network, which was the station that Art Bell started many years ago. It is a paranormal quiz show. People tell me I'm funny. Obviously no one in here, but people do tell me I'm funny. So if you're interested in that, it's very unique. There's nothing like it anywhere else. We have 100,000 listeners in 190 countries all over the world. And the benefit of that for me is that when I come to fabulous buildings like this, I can tell my listeners on Friday night where I was, I can play the evidence, and there'll be people in the Philippines, Serbia, Brazil that now know where Menominee is and where this theatre is. That's very beneficial. If you want to tune in on Friday, I will discuss the investigations and my experiences in this building. Now, if Scott can have his microphone turned on, we did an investigation here last night, and we think we've got between 25 to 30 EVPs alone, just on the things that we've got investigating this building. So what we're going to do, and we don't know if the science is going to help us, but Scott has got a microphone, he's got his laptop. We've chosen 4 of the best EVPs and sound bites that we think we found here on last night's investigation. So Scott's going to grab his microphone. Go for it, sir. See how enthusiastic he is about public speaking? He was an air traffic controller up in Duluth. So exactly the type of person you would want doing air traffic controlling in Duluth. So what you're going to do for me, Scott, is you're going to just give me a little intro into where you was and how that EVP came about. We'll press the play button, we'll see what we get, and we'll just give you a flavour of our investigation last night very quickly. And again, I want to thank Scott and my team for getting this ready today and having this opportunity. So let's have a chat with me, Scott. Tell me where you got this from.
First of all, no promises that this is going to work.
See, he always starts off negative. You see, my glass is half full.
Set expectations low.
How many times have you been married? Come on, I've only got an hour. Hurry up.
All right, first clip is after the second vigil when we were up in there. I brought my digital voice recorder down here. I was alone. Everybody else that was investigating was downstairs in the basement with the review. And so I left my digital voice recorder there, and I explained to anyone who was on the stage what they could do. They could talk into it, and I'm walking up the path here, and I say thank you. And when you listen to the clip, you'll hear me say thank you, and then you'll hear a female voice say, "You're welcome," and then after about 15 seconds or so, you're going to hear somebody walking across the stage in hard-soled shoes on the wood floor. Hopefully this will work. Thank you.
We're going to play that again, and I'm just going to ask you to listen for certain things. Just to repeat what Scott said, there was no one in the auditorium. The team was in the basement. He'd set up a DVR on the stage. There's no one around. We're in lockdown. There's no children anywhere in the building. Everyone's accounted for. He's on his own. Scott, who's a very nice gentleman, wants to thank the spirits because we just had a good vigil. So he places his DVR on the stage and he says, "Thank you." The moment after that, instantly, it says, "You're welcome." And then you get the footsteps on the stage once Scott has left. So let's just listen again, and we'll play that one more time.
Thank you.
That's a nice EVP because we've got no equipment running. We didn't hear it in real time. Our DVR picked that up. It's a child's voice saying, "You're welcome." And again, if you wish to hear that again, we'll set up downstairs. And if you come into the basement after this, you can hear them through the headphones. But let's hear the next one. Set the next one up for me, Scott.
Same place, digital voice recorder's there. You're going to hear some voices in the background. That's the people that are starting to wander to the next investigation. But you're going to hear a child's voice very clearly speak up. And I don't remember what it says, but you'll hear it.
I think when we heard that through the headphones, it says "here." But again, it's a child's voice. There's no children in the building. Everything's locked down, and you would agree that's a child. So just play that one more time. I mean, there's no, even if you don't know what that said, that's a child on the stage. So we're going to play a couple more. Set the next one up for me, please, sir.
The next clip is during one of our investigations, we had a temperature change up here. Adrian is commenting on the temperature, and you're going to hear a female say, "You should know."
66.7, that makes me happy. And we're going to jump in the next.
Once more, again, I'm recording baseline measurements. So when I go into the room, I'm looking at humidity change, I'm looking at temperature changes, I'm making some baseline notes. So if anything happens, I can see if it's anomalous. What the woman says in the background, after I say what the temperature is, she says, "You should know." So again.
Did you hear that the first time?
It was clear.
66.7, that makes me happy. And we're going to jump in the next.
You should know. Apparently I'm an expert on temperature, who knew? We'll do one more, Scott, and then we'll jump in with the slides, okay?
This one might be a little difficult. This is a spirit box session, and I ask if Mabel is here, and a voice says Mabel.
There was something there. Mabel, are you with us right now? Would you come talk to me for a minute?
Okay, let's do one more. You're listening for the Mabel repeated, so let's do one more.
It's in a male voice.
There was something there. Mabel, are you with us right now? Would you come talk to me for a minute?
So again, we've got maybe 25 to 30 just on what we did today. And by the end of the week, we'll probably have a huge file of this. And again, lots of children talking, EVPs, even without the ghost hunting equipment. So thank you for that, and thank you to my team. We'll jump in. Let me talk to you about my books and how they come about. This is Loon Lake Cemetery. I live somewhere around here. The Legend of Loon Lake. It's a small pioneer cemetery. No one's been buried there since the 1920s. It's overgrown. If you didn't know where it was, you'd never find it. I had a map and I drove past it 3 times. You literally have to fight your way in. A lot of it's been vandalised. It's the local sport for teenagers to go out to creepy Loon Lake Cemetery with a beer and probably do Ouija boards and lots of other things you shouldn't be doing. But every teenager has grown up knowing about the legend of Loon Lake, and it's almost become the idea of showing bravery by hanging out there at night with your friends back in the day. The legend is there was a witch. I was told this on my travels. There's a witch. She was decapitated and buried in the cemetery in 1880, and I thought, I don't believe that. I can't believe we were killing witches in 1880. We've got electricity. We're not a million miles away from getting the car and the aeroplane. In fact, I did some research, and the last witch to be executed in this country was the last witch of the Salem witch trials in 1693. So I had an inkling that this wasn't true. So I go out to Loon Lake Cemetery. It's a fabulous place. This ended up being the front cover of my book, but it's everything you'd want from a rundown cemetery in the middle of nowhere. It takes a mile of hiking through weeds just to get there. There's the legend of the witch. She's been decapitated and buried. The curse is that if you jump over her grave or walk over her grave, you will be cursed and you'll be dead within the year. So that's the curse, that's the legend. I set up my equipment, and as I'm setting my equipment up, there's a woman floating towards me in a very cliched kind of way, almost like a Japanese horror film where the ghosts are floating on clouds. This woman wearing a simple white prairie dress, holding flowers, prairie blooms, drifts across the cemetery, and I tried to take a picture as quickly as possible. This does it no justice. There's actually a white shape that you see. So again, if you come downstairs at the end of this, I'll open up my laptop and you will see that there's an anomalous white figure coming towards me through the cemetery. And this was an artist's impression. The reason the town thinks that she's a witch is because there's a poem inscribed on her gravestone. And I'm going to repeat this now in a very creepy British accent, because all of your villains in this country appear to be British at the moment. So I'm going to give my best Alec Guinness impression and read this in a creepy way. My friends, beware as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare yourself to follow me. So that is kind of creepy. They thought it was a curse. If you do some basic research, you'll discover that poem's been around since the medieval times. Every other gravestone in New England has that written on it. And there's a Latin version that's available on the tomb of the Black Prince in Canterbury Cathedral that dates back to the medieval period. In actuality, what happened is that in these small pioneer towns, you don't have access to a stonemason. You don't have access to a quarry. So when your family members died in small little towns all dotted around the Midwest, you ordered your gravestone from the Sears and Roebuck catalogue, and you paid $3, and 2 months later it arrived in a packing crate surrounded by straw. This is actually a Sears and Roebuck gravestone. So all the gravestones, I suspect, in your town of any great history or era were Sears and Roebuck. I'd like to say that it took me months and months and months of diligent research to find out that she wasn't killed by a decapitation, but it literally took me 10 seconds. I went on Ancestry.com, clicked a button, and her death certificate came up. She died of diphtheria. and she was only 17 or 18. But they think she was a witch due purely to the gravestone. Now, we jump to Megadeth. A very strange thing happened to me last year. I'm sat in bed. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, my laptop's open, I'm reading the BBC News. I've got my cup of tea, there's a cat curled up at my feet, and the phone rings. I don't normally answer my cell phone if I don't recognise the number, because with the best will in the world, my number's all over the place. I go to paranormal, sci-fi, horror expos, all manner of strange, bizarre and creepy people have my number. This room accepted. Although there's one or two of you I've got my eye on, that is true. But it came up as Scottsdale, Arizona, and I thought I'll answer it. And a gentleman on the other end said, "This is David Ellefson of Megadeth. I'm in the coffee shop in Jackson right now. Can you meet me for a coffee?" And I was thinking, this is my friends winding me up. But I embraced the idea. I threw on some clothes, brushed my teeth, rushed out to Jackson, which is only 20 minutes away. And David Ellefson owns a coffee shop. He's born in Jackson County. You may have seen when I was setting up and I was trying to get my sound right, that David Ellefson actually wrote the foreword to my book. He's written a song called Mary Jane, and it's inspired by the Loon Lake witch. And he'd heard my investigations, he'd heard my stories, and he wanted to meet with me. David Ellefson is here with the gravestone. The gravestone's now in the Historical Society because so many people have stolen it. They think it's funny to take Mary Jane's gravestone and hide it in people's beds and front lawns. Every other house in Jackson has had this gravestone appear, you know, in the back of their car and all kinds of places, so they keep it safe. And also they don't want people, can you believe this? People have tried to exhume the body. So they've removed the gravestone so people can't dig her up. Poor lady, 17, 18-year-old housemaid, dies of diphtheria, can't even rest in peace. David Ellefson is obsessed with coffee. He will tell you, and it's written in his biography, that he had an addiction to alcohol and drugs, and he got off of that. He's now a pastor, he's a reverend. He has his own church in Arizona. And he's obsessed with coffee. And he says, I want to produce a coffee and I want to call it Mary Jane. And I said, well, why don't you write urban legend? Why don't we call the coffee urban legend? I'll put it on the front of my book and we'll cross-promote. And he said, that's a fabulous idea. So as bizarre as it sounds, and even now as I'm saying it, it sounds a little odd, that as a middle-aged British historian, I'm now cross-promoting with Megadeth. If you go on their website, they're selling my book. So this is the part of the evening where I say you need to buy Megadeth's records, they're very good. They have sold 60 million records and they did win a Grammy 2 years ago. They're the second, I think, highest selling thrash metal band in the history of music, so they know what they're doing quite clearly. He wrote the foreword to my book. I'm not going to play it. I have actually got a slide where he reads the foreword to the book, but that takes a couple of minutes and you can read that in my book rather than, but he very kindly, from his studio, he did actually read for me the foreword. He just talks about living in the Midwest as a child. He talks about urban legends and doing things perhaps you shouldn't do as a kid. And it talks about the fact that you can leave your door open, you can leave your keys in the ignition, and he talks about all the things that you would experience being a child in the Midwest that certainly growing up in London wouldn't happen, because within 10 minutes you will have no car and your house will be stripped of everything you own. Okay, I'm going to whiz through a lot of these because there's lots to show you, but that's how that book came about. I want to talk about the St James Hotel. Just because it's fairly close to this location, bearing in mind I travel all over the Midwest. One thing I will say, if you're interested, I spoke about the fact that I'm doing my talk to MUFON, the UFO book, on the 12th of October, if you wish to come along. I'm actually doing a haunted Halloween walk through Red Wing on that Thursday, which I believe, if I go backwards, is the 10th. So keep an eye open for that. Have a look on my websites, have a look on my Facebook. We had 200 people turn up last year, and I had to almost close the town. And I've investigated 5 or 6 very historic buildings in Red Wing. It's a nice hour-and-a-half walk with little lanterns, and I talk about the ghosts. And if you want to come along to that, you're more than welcome. Make a note of that. I investigated the St James Hotel many times. We did 2 or 3 investigations a year for about a 10-year period. One of the things they don't tell you is when they first built that in the 1870s, it was on Native American burial mounds. And obviously the laws are different, society is different now. And when they dug those Native American bodies up, they just threw them in the river. So the basement's very haunted. You can imagine touching the wall, and just on the other side of that, there could be bodies. There is a rumour, although it has been proven to be true, that they would see a head coming through the corridor at them. So imagine that, you're in the basement of this hotel, and don't think of the basement as being a miserable, dusty, cold, brick situation. It's actually a really nice basement. They do wedding banquets there. It's a really nice basement. It's laid out very well. But one of my investigation team did actually see a head coming at her, and I was in a different part of the building. And one of my team members ran up to me and said, "You need to get downstairs quick, Kate's seen something." And when I got down there, I never thought this was true, but it turns out it is true. Have you ever seen episodes of Scooby-Doo where people's teeth are chattering together? So the poor lady sat on a chair and her teeth are clicking together. And that genuinely happens. And she'd seen this head. And I said to her, "What did it look like?" And she said it had straight black hair. And I said, "Was it darker in skin tone?" And she said, "Yes." So it wouldn't be a surprise to me if when those bodies were just removed from there, that a head perhaps detached itself from a body, you may have a disembodied, dismembered, ghostly phantom head going through the basement looking for its body. So that's one of the hauntings we encountered. The other thing that happened, and again, I'm all about the history, the Sea Wing disaster was the biggest maritime disaster in Minnesotan history. 98 people drowned. So this paddle steamer was packed. It was going down the river. Suddenly there was a wind that came up. It was top heavy because everyone was on the top deck. Imagine all those women falling into the Mississippi River with all their crinoline, their layers, their petticoats. Once they got wet, they just sank to the bottom. It didn't matter how good a swimmer you were. If you're wearing all of that and that gets wet, you're going straight to the bottom. We can go on to that site. When we do that walk in October, I'll walk you up to that site and we can have a look into the river where that took place. The interesting thing for me, and my team will back this up, is that when we were investigating the basement, I've never seen this before, and a fog started rolling through the basement, a really thick fog that reminds you that you're back in Whitechapel in Victorian London. It was that kind of sensation, and it slowly rolled closer and closer towards us and went by. And I ran the spirit box and I said, "Is that the collective people that died?" It was the anniversary of the Sea Wing disaster. I said, "Is this the collective group of spirits coming back to the hotel?" Because what you've got to remember is that those 98 people that drowned, most of them were staying in the hotel. So they're coming back to their rooms. But they're coming back in spirit en masse from the pier and the dock where the disaster took place all the way back into the hotel. And again, just repeating that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. So again, if you want to come on that walk, we've investigated the Sheldon Theatre, we've investigated the Rail Depot, and we have access to those locations as well. I did want to put some slides in today that are based in Wisconsin. So I'm going to talk very briefly about Fairlawn up in northern Wisconsin. If ever there was a haunted building, right? You know school kids run past this on their way to school every morning. It's a fabulous building. It's got so many rooms and bedrooms. When we investigated this building, I went up to the 3rd floor and I found one of my team running cable through the building, and he just looked at me blankly. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, I'm lost. I don't know how to get downstairs. He'd been wandering around the 3rd floor. There's so many rooms, he couldn't get back downstairs. We resolved this because we walked around dropping breadcrumbs. So this resolved this issue. I don't know whether you know this or not, but this is the historian in me coming out. If you go into a huge mansion house or a big manor building, this is the front door. Can you see how wide the corridor is? That shows you how much money they had, because they can afford to waste space. So if you go into a building and it's got a big wide entry corridor, it just gives you an indication of the wealth of that family. So keep that in mind the next time you're out and about visiting these historic locations. The gentleman that built this was Martin Patterson. He was a lumber baron. And I'm going to play for you now the first EVPs I want to play for you tonight that are part of my slideshow. So we'll pray to Archangel Gabriel, the Archangel of Communication, that this actually works. And Scott asked the questions, the gentleman here asked, may I call you Martin? And he responds yes. So I just want to get you used to hearing how we have these dialogues and conversations where I'm pulling history from the lips of the dead. So keep your fingers crossed. Let's have a listen.
May I call you Martin?
So quite clearly at the end of that sentence he goes, yes. I'm not going to repeat these because I've got so many to get through. I just want to show you. So if you didn't quite hear it or you missed it, we'll play it for you again downstairs. But for alacrity, I'm just going to whisk through these. This was a nice one. There's a room in Fairlawn that's a wedding room. And brides get married there. They have a dressing room for the bride. I think this was Gloria's EVP. Is that correct? This one's yours?
Yeah.
This is a joy. This is one of the best EVPs. We're setting up our equipment, so we're not even doing a video at the moment. By the way, it's really good policy and really good practice to run your digital voice recorder the moment you get into the building. A lot of our best EVPs, like the one Scott got here yesterday, was just because he was running a DVR. There was not a vigil taking place when he got that little girl saying, you know, you're welcome. So the moment you get into the building, run your DVR. Most of the best EVPs are in the moments where you're setting up, because the ghosts don't know what's going on. They don't think you're listening to them. They're having conversations amongst themselves. This is an example of two ghosts talking to one another whilst we're setting up equipment. There's a little girl, and she does what every little girl has done since the dawn of time, where she's going, mummy, 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 mum, mum, mummy. Her mother responds. So the ghost girl is asking for her mum, and the woman responds, I am here. So listen, you can hear us setting up equipment, but listen to the ghost girl asking for her mum, and then a second ghost giving her that response.
There's still a bit of here. We still are under a couple days
So again, you can hear us chatting amongst ourselves. We were probably discussing, you know, a baseball game or something. I say that, I've never even seen a touchdown. I have no clue about baseball. But you can hear quite clearly the little girl going, mummy, mummy, mummy. And the female ghost, which I assume is her mother, responds, I'm right here. So I'll play that again because it is a nice one.
There's still a bit of here. We still are under a couple days
That's great, isn't it? You'd be amazed the amount of times we've heard ghosts talking amongst themselves without us even, you know, having input into that process. I don't know how well you can see that, but I took several photographs. I take baseline photos. Wow, if you're there, Uncle Arthur, just give me a sign, any sign. Wow, thank you. Now you all owe me $30. I took a photograph I'm here all week, I do stand-up. I took some photographs of his office, and I don't use a flash because I don't want false positives, I don't want dust and pollen. So I've got a tripod, and they're long exposures. And I took 5 photographs, all in the same place with a cable release, because I want some controls. I want to see what all the pictures look like. And in one picture out of the 5, you've got this ghostly face, you know, that looks like some sort of Masonic kind of shroud with the eyes. It looks a bit Scooby-Doo, to be honest, but it appears in just one of the pictures in the desk and doesn't appear in any of the others, and I took 5 all in a row. So if I ever ask you, or you come to me and say, do you think this is a ghost? The first thing I'm going to say is, what does it look like in the other 3 or 4 photos? Do you see how that works? Because you're doing science, you're creating a control. I think I put it in black and white here just to show you. We're going to move to Iowa. We get all over the place. Again, theatres are fabulous places to investigate. Look at all the energy up here. Imagine all the actors and all the actresses that have been up here, you know, presenting themselves. You've got all the EMF, all the lighting rigs. There's so much juice back here, electromagnetic fields. This is like a finger buffet to every ghost that wants to come along. How many people in this room wish they were a rock star? Because when you're dead and there's no one in this theatre, I can stand here playing air guitar. We can do plays, we can do anything we want. You know, that sense of electricity, especially in cinemas as well. You know, you've got the Saturday morning pictures of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. Your great-grandparents kissed for the first time back here in 1912 on the back row. You've got that metronomic flicker of old celluloid film going through open arc projectors. It's just a joy. Why would it not be haunted? The only reverential energy you get better than that anywhere in the world is in a church or a cathedral. And, you know, look around you. Similar looking buildings, right? Again, they're a non-profit organisation and they've renovated their theatre. It looks fabulous. This is the Wheating Theatre, Tamar County in Iowa. I'm about to play for you, because you're very lucky and blessed, the best 6 to 7 seconds of audio I've ever received anywhere in the world in 25 years. This is remarkable. So let me set the scene for you. We're in the green room. I haven't fully explored this building, but I'm sure back there's an area where the artists put their makeup on. You can see the mirrors where the light bulbs are, right? My team was sat here in the dark. I'm sat here. My team were here. Using my psychic skills, my sensitivities, I saw a man standing pretty much where I am now, and he's about to walk up the stairs to get onto the stage. So when I play you this, I'm sitting here, it's dark, I see a gentleman standing here, just about to go up these stairs, and what you'll hear me say is something along the lines of, there's a guy over there. I can see a guy standing there. I turn on my ghost box, because instantly I want to know who he is. So I turn on my ghost box and I say to him, what's your name? He says, Peter, Peter, twice. I turn the ghost box off, I repeat what he said so my team are aware what's happened. In the background, without any equipment on at all, he whispers, Peter, Peter. I don't hear it, of course, because my recording devices work far better in those frequencies than an old art historian who's been to too many Megadeth concerts. I then turn the ghost box on again and I say to him, what's your name? Can you repeat it? Because I want to back this up. I want to show it's not a coincidence. And he says, Peter, Peter again. So you've got me being psychic. The ghost box says, Peter, Peter. He says his name in the gap. So we've now got an EVP as well as the ghost box. And then he says it again at the end. So I'll play it a couple of times and see what you get out of this.
Absolutely, that's a clarification of that. I think there's a guy down here and that woman. Could you tell me the name of the man that's down here? Peter.
Listen. Yeah. Right? Listen again.
Do you prefer being called Pete or Peter?
Let me play that for you again and let it sink in what's just happened there. I've been psychic. The ghost box has backed up my psychic skills so the two are corroborating one another. I then have an amazing EVP in the middle of that, and then I revisit the ghost box and it confirms it again. I mean, if you're a skeptic, it's going to take a big argument to suggest how this isn't paranormal activity.
Absolutely, that's a clarification of that. I think there's a guy down here and that woman. Could you tell me the name of the man that's down here? Peter.
Listen. All right?
Do you prefer being called Pete or Peter?
So this is how we work. These are how the books are written. This is what my team does. We're in the Wheating Theatre. Psychic work, ghost box, EVP, ghost box, all corroborating. What's left? What do I need to do now? I need to research that. I need to find historically who this gentleman is. So, I go to the Tamar County Historical Society, and the gentleman that founded that town was called Peter Peters. He was giving me his full name. And there's his census record, and there's his record in the Tamar County Historical Society paperwork. Psychic work, empirical evidence, historical research. Now you tell me that ghosts don't exist. Because how does that happen? And now he's in my book. I've got a photograph of the guy. This is now in my book. I'm bringing history back from the lips of the dead. We're way beyond proving that ghosts exist. We did that 25 years ago. We're now using them to further history and to solve murder cases. I'll whiz through these because I want to get through as much as possible. This is a Christie House in Long Prairie. By the way, creepy child, right? Her name's Edith. She died a year after this photograph of an abdominal obstruction, and he was her dad, and he's the local doctor, and he couldn't save her. Can you imagine having to operate on your own child and she dies in front of you on the kitchen table? Lots of trauma. If you get a chance to go, it's an amazing building. It's a vacuum. It's unchanged since 1901. He performed operations on the kitchen table. So, of course, I put objects on the table. Again, I want to get through as much as possible, but I have a fabulous piece of video where you see some of my trigger objects just flying off the table across the room as poltergeist activity. Because as a paranormal investigator, where's the first place you're going to put stuff? It's just going to be on the table, you know, where Mrs. Johnson gave birth to her child, or you had to remove someone's appendix, right? Or worse. Let me tell you a fabulous piece of history. I'm an author, so I love words. I love etymology and the study of words, where they come from. This is the parlour. 2 bodies were laid out in rest in this parlour. His first wife died, and poor little Edith. Back in the Victorian period, you used to have the body laid out in a wake, and they would be in your house for a week or two, sitting there, and flowers became popular at funerals to get rid of the smell, right? That's why flowers and lilies and so forth are at funerals. They're having their dinner here. There's the mum laid out here. During the Victorian period, they discovered germology. They discovered bacteria for the first time, and they suddenly realised it probably wasn't a good idea to have a decomposing corpse next to the dining room. But they'd always done this. Why would you take your mother somewhere else? It's her house. She's lived here all her life. So they made purpose-built buildings around town to house the bodies before they were buried. But no one would take them there. Why would you take your mother there? She's been with us and in this house all her life. So to make that fracture and that sever easier for people, they called them funeral homes and funeral parlours, because they're trying to make the connection with the body laid out in the parlour. Slowly but surely, people then took their bodies to the funeral parlour and the funeral homes, and this is the fabulous piece. Parlour's a really old-fashioned word. Who uses that now? That's the word your grandmother used, right? We don't call this a parlour anymore, because the moment the bodies were removed from the parlour, we now call this the living room. It's the room for the living. You see how words in everyday usage, come out of death and come out of funerary. It's fabulous, isn't it? Who doesn't like words? Here's the attic. That's a full spectrum camera. This is Dr. Christie's bearskin coat. Imagine going out at 3 o'clock in the morning in January because someone's got their arm caught in a threshing machine. This is the chest of drawers. There's a mirror, and that's a portrait of little Edith. I want to show you this because Heather, one of my team members, who's downstairs selling all kinds of strange and creepy products right now, she took photographs of every part of the building we're about to investigate, because that's a good baseline test. If something moves, we've got a control and a record of what it used to look like. So, she took a picture of that area, and in that little slither of mirror in the corner, there's a man. Scott and myself were the only 2 people on that investigation, and it doesn't look like either of us. And it's in colour. And I want to show you what Dr. Christie looks like. So imagine you're standing there, taking photographs, doing baseline photos, and you've caught the reflection of a ghost that you didn't know was standing next to you when you were taking those photographs. Let me show you a comparison. Can we get the lights down a little bit? Is that a possibility? You are a star, sir. Thank you. Can you see? There's no colour photographs of Dr. Christie. He died in 1947. That's Dr. Christie in the mirror in the attic with 2 portraits of Dr. Christie either side. He's back in his house, haunting his house. We have a photograph of a ghost. And we tried to replicate that. We tried to get people standing in different positions. We looked for colour photographs. That 100%, we've removed all elements of doubt through science and through trying to reproduce this, is a photograph of a ghost in the mirror of the Christie House. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let me just finish on a couple of bits and pieces for you here. This is an abandoned school in Morton in Renville County. It was abandoned in about 1986. It's a horrible pit of a building. You walk in, windows are broken, the roof's starting to come away, so seeds have blown in, it's rained. So you open a door on the 3rd floor, and there's a jungle. You're working your way through plant life. I found 2 Japanese soldiers that thought the war was still on. I have nothing to back that up. But there's animals running around, there's bats, there's badgers and foxes. It was 100 degrees. It really was a miserable investigation. We never normally get to investigate such fabulous properties. We're normally at the bottom of a cargo freighter, up to our knees in water, oil, asbestos and peeling lead paint. But on this occasion, there's me standing there. One of the few times you'll see me wearing a pair of shorts. No need for my standards to drop just because I'm here. That split the room in half. We're in one of the basement classrooms. So I'm just going to whiz through these. I'm not going to repeat them for you. I just want to get through as much as possible. But I'm having a conversation here, and you can follow what's happening, okay? So let me run this through you. First question, did you go to this school? Fairly reasonable thing to start with, I would suggest.
Did you go to this school, yes or no? There was a girl's voice that said yes.
Again, if you've got your headphones on, you can hear these a little better. I'm not going to repeat them just because I want to get through as much as possible, but you'll have to believe me. Some of you may have heard that, but you'll have to believe me that's there. And again, you can come and listen to these afterwards. Were you a teacher or a student?
Were you a teacher or a student? There could be a teacher and a student.
So I'm asking if they talk there. Yes, sure. So I'm getting some really good positive responses.
Did you actually teach in this classroom, yes or no?
Sure, yes. What subject was your specialism? She's an English teacher.
You said this was your classroom. What did you, what subject was your specialism? English.
It's no good having all this information historically if I can't look her up, right? So I need to know what her last name is. You can't go into local historical society and say, I've got a guy I need to look up, his name's Bob. By the way, you'd be amazed how many people come up to me and say, I've got a friend that lives in London, do you know him? His name's John. You know, and I have to remind them 12 million people live in London and I don't know a guy called John. So, what year did you teach in this school? Yeah. What year did you teach? But she replies, she actually says this about 5 times, and I think I've only listed 2 or 3 here, but have a listen, you'll catch one of them for sure.
What year did you first teach in this school?
There's that 5 in there, fast. Again, just because of the science background in me, I want to clarify. I don't want this to be a coincidence. I'm trying to avoid skeptical people saying, well, it was just came through on the radio, it's random. So I ask again, just to make my evidence stronger. And Nicole is the woman who runs a historical society, and I was just wondering if the teacher that worked there knew who Nicole was. That was my line of questioning.
Do you know Nicole? Are you related to Nicole? Someone keeps shouting out the word fast.
So again, remember what I do, remember how we operate. I've got all the information I need. Monday morning, I go to the Historical Society. It's a lifestyle decision. I'm happy to go through damp, miserable basements and being stared up by old German women who run historical societies. And I found the obituary for Esther Foss, who was the English teacher that worked in that classroom. Again, I defy you to tell me that ghosts don't exist, because how do we get to this point? And now she's in my book. Now we know who she is. History's being brought back from the very lips of the dead. Let me just do one more before I finish tonight. This is a railway station in Danube, again, Renville County. It's no longer in operation, but there are freight trains that go by. So I'm going to quickly whiz through this for you, just in the last 2 minutes. I've got a psychic who also works with me. His name's Brian. He's a very tall gentleman with a big beard. And he's brilliant, and we do psychic work together. So the first thing before we start the video, I say to him, Brian, what are you getting? And this is his response.
Just a lot of residual stuff that you'd expect from a deep-off. Town center kind of stuff, and keep getting more kind of war images. I got a band.
I got a bed. Before we've done anything, before we've turned on a single piece of equipment, my psychic says there's a guy here, his name's Ben. I turn on the ghost box. Can you step forward?
And they know who those people are, or they know any of those names. Can they step forward and say hello and give me your name, if we've called your name out?
We're in the basement, by the way, but quite clearly he says Ben 3 or 4 times. I'm sure you caught one of them. Again, we've gone through this before. My science nerdy background requires me to ask him again. It's always, I'll give you a little tip. If someone says their name's Bob, ask, do you prefer Robert or Bob? Because they want to get their name right. So, you know, if your name's Bill, do you prefer William or Bill? Do you prefer Dave or David? It squeezes a bit more evidence out of them, so bear that in mind. So I'm going again, right?
Ben, do you prefer being called Ben or Benjamin?
Ben, I can't go to the Historical Society where they've got 200 years of documents and say, do you know a guy called Ben? So I need his last name.
I'd ask you for your last name. Can you tell me your last name?
Horst. Again, I'm going to ask again. I don't want people to think this is random words being spat out of the radio.
Can you shout out your last name?
He says it 3 or 4 times. So remember how we operate. Psychic, empirical evidence. We need the history now. So again, Monday morning, I go to the Renville County Historical Society. I don't know these small little towns. When I pulled in on Thursday night, I've no clue who lives here. I've no clue who comes from Menominee. I've no knowledge or anything. Even the people in the Historical Society don't know all the people that's ever lived in this town. So I go through the records, I go through the historical research, and there's Benjamin Horst, who died at the railway crossing when his car was hit by a train. The Historical Society never knew this. I regularly give Historical Societies big files of information and say, there you go, have that. And there's his car, there's his obituary, there's his details. Again, how can you argue that ghosts do not exist? The psychic got his name, the ghost box got his name over and over and over, and historically we found the guy, and he died outside the railway crossing. There's a picture of what's left of his car and a report of what happened. And this is what we do. We travel around the world, solving crimes, finding history, drawing it from the lips of the dead, putting that out there, and adding to the canon of the history of the Midwest. Ghosts are all around us. We need to use them. We need to make them useful. If you wish to chat with me and my team, if you wish to grab a book, because if you don't buy a book, I'll have no gas money. I'm going to be sleeping on your sofa tonight. Come down into the basement. We'll make that happen for you. And I just want to thank you for having me and my team here this weekend. And I want to thank Alison and all of her staff. And I think you need to give them a big round of applause. Thank you.